Hello, viewers, and thank you so much for joining us once again on another episode of The Big Talk. And today I have a special guest, Professor Gift Mugano, an economist, a seasoned economist of that nature. And Prof, welcome to this program, and I want you to take this opportunity to meet our viewers.
Thank you, Costa. Good day, Zimbabweans. I hope we are going to enjoy the conversations.
Let's just get into it straight away. How would you respond to someone who says, or I would rather start by, how would you describe the state of our current economy in Zimbabwe right now?
So we have an economy that is not performing very well, particularly when you look at major indicators, social indicators, people in poverty, living in poverty. I think there is a bit of small improvement. It's around 43% of the population in extreme poverty. I'm more worried about the social development indicators. They're quite interesting barometers of how the economy is doing. So you look at standing growth, children who are not growing in a normal way. We're talking about at least 1/4 of the population to 1/3 of the population. Standing growth. Unemployment is what it worries me a lot. We're talking about 3.5 million young people in the working class. By the way, the young people, youth, is 7 million people, 7 million in terms of our population. So you have that half of that not working. The other part, half, they're at school, they're school going. And then you see the drug challenge which our young youth are suffering from. It's a result of lack of economic opportunities. Look at unemployment overall in general. You have 87.7% of the population employed, of the working force rather, employed in the informal sector, which means the formal sector provide jobs to 12.3%. Government was targeting to have 30% by end of December 2025. So 30% against 12.3%. And of course, the other side, we also want to look at the issue of the education sector, the health sector, the civil service, how that sector is being remunerated is an issue of concern because human capital must be productive. So you don't expect workers to be productive when they are earning, professors at the University of Zimbabwe, taking home $228, something which I give to my maid. And these are professors, professionals, and there's no difference between a professor and a cleaner. I think that is not a good thing for a country. But it's not all gloomy. I think it's so fair to balance, to give the perspective of the positive side. The first one is the way we are generating foreign currency. We are doing very well, exceptionally very well. This year we might hit $14-15 billion in terms of total foreign currency receipts. We have not hit that amount since independence. That is a positive thing. We are in top 5 in sub-Saharan in Africa, and but basically in terms of earning of foreign currency. If we are managing it very well in terms of accountability and transparency, we should not be having challenges of foreign currency. The other positive thing is the issues regarding which is linked to foreign currency, reserves of foreign currency, which we've built. Now we are on $1 billion. A country must build its reserves. It's like at a household level, you must have at least some reserves of money, savings, which are put somewhere to assist you in case of emergencies. So I think central bank has done well in that regard. Inflation, which used to be giving us a headache, has receded. It's gone down from 95% average inflation for the last 8 months or so to 18%. And to be very specific, 18.88% as of 3rd November 2025. Those are positive development. The last one I want to talk about, which is quite interesting, the construction sector. I think when you move around the country, whether you're in Masvingo, you're in Manicaland, you are Midlands, there's a boom in construction sector. People might say its government is leading in terms of roads and the dam construction, but I think private sector and also households are doing quite a big lot. You'll be very surprised and amazed when you see a particular area which is being developed. You see it to be mushroomed with houses. Tells you the resilience of Zimbabweans, that they're hard workers. So it's a mixed bag, which we could actually tend to be a positive development if we do more accountability and address issue of corruption and be more responsive to the needs of the people. And of course, reprioritize our resources in a most effective way, which is developmental. My last point I want to talk about, my major worry is that in as much as there are positive gains in the economy, government has not mastered the game of having what we call distributive growth or shared growth or shared development. Because with these developments, you'd expect that it should filter into the pockets of the people. Because when you talk of development or progress in a country, we must not explain it here on your podcast. People must feel it in their pockets in Chimani money.
I want us to periodize this. This development, the economic development, and have a sense of whether are we descending or ascending. Are we doing well or not doing well? Let's start maybe at the beginning of the Second Republic, the new dispensation. If you can give brief comparisons in terms of what we were doing during the First and the Second Republic, and whether are we going up or we are in recession.
Yeah. So on the social development indicators, which I talked about, we are going backwards. Because in terms of poverty, in 2018, 2017, it was 29% of the population living in extreme poverty.
Now it's
43, but it was 49%. So there's just been an improvement because of the agricultural sector. You know, if you have if it is performing very well, particularly in terms of yields and output, we are outside drought. There was no drought this season. So there were some dividends, which then helped us to get out of the 49%. But we were stuck at 49% for 6 years, if I'm not mistaken. And that is receding, right? So the social development indicators are not looking good. We're receding. I don't want to repeat. I would want to say, you know that during the GNU, civil servants used to be getting around $500 salary a month.
It's a minimum, right?
It's a minimum. Now, we are talking about they're taking home $228. Of course, there's a big component, but we're saying the real money they take home is $220. It's receding. I used to lecture at a university. I once lectured at Pinto University, University of Zimbabwe. There was a point where we were earning $1,700 at Pinto University. And my colleagues can confirm that. But now it's history. What the lecturers are earning is what maids are earning in South Africa. And that is going backwards, actually, in those areas. The same applies to standing growth. We are receding. But where we are doing very well, where we are progressing in the second dispensation is the issue of construction. Yeah, there's been amazing work led by government. If you check how much money has been put into road and transport and irrigation dams, I think the major concern has not been the investment into infrastructure. It has been the issue of value for money. To say, when you hear how much money is being spent and corruption, I mean that's the right word, taking place in that sector, in the tenders, and I think that is an area of concern. I'm sure we'll go into it when we look at the budget to amplify that aspect, and because the evidence is there. I think the major issue has been the $1.7 billion, which has been quite a talking point, which is a debt now. But the issue of foreign currency reserves, building reserve, I think this discipline has done very well. The maximum the first dispensation has gone, as far as I remember. I'm talking about the recent 2 decades. In terms of reserves of foreign currency, was 3 weeks. But the current reserves are now 1.2 months.
But I want us to have a flow conversation here. Could you please just touch maybe on what is really causing this recession of our economy? We used to have the 29% as part of unemployment and poverty, and then 49, 43 as per your figures. So what are the causes of this kind of recession?
Or a regression, rather. Yeah, this is the result of mainly currency-led economic meltdown, company closures. I'm sure you have noted in recent years in this dispensation that a number of companies have folded up. And at the top of it, it is a currency crisis. We had so many times, a number of times we've changed our currency in this dispensation from RTGS as a new currency. It came on 20 February 2019 when we changed even the exchange rate to 2.5 against $1, if you remember. That was the first currency. I mean, the bond note came a bit earlier, but it was in the first dispensation. The second dispensation was 2019. We already in what? The second what? Dispensation. Yes. With the bond note, with the RTGS. And I think it should be 25 June 2019. We went into Zimbabwe dollar local. Right, then we moved back to US dollar in the end of March, 31 March 2020. And we had both the currency as Zimbabwe dollar local and the US dollar multi-currency regime. But in 9 months, we had lost our currency because government had made a decision to say we are now going for monocurrency in June 2019, which we said we didn't have sufficient condition for it. So when these things are happening, imagine companies are coming out of a dollarized environment where debts, credit loans were being given in US dollars. And you start on 20 February 2019 and you are now in a new currency, but they've given your money in US dollars and lost, and you lose the case. Now you go into June 2019, you are now on monocurrency, no more US dollar. Then you come back. So the exchange rate losses became a serious threat in terms of impairment of assets of companies, and a number of companies went down. If you look at the story of OK, which I always been made very clear, OK Zimbabwe, it's a public company. I can talk about it. It's an exchange rate issue. I know people were saying that it's management. There was a serious debate on social media where colleagues were saying even government is poor management. They changed the management, nothing changed. It was a currency crisis, and it was wounded by the currency crisis. So when jobs are being lost, people are finding themselves in the streets, and they also have external shocks.
In that particular incident, in that particular case, who should be held accountable?
For what?
For company closures, like mentioning the...
It's government. Okay. It's government, because the government is the owner of the currency, and the government has been responsible for these crises which are happening, because government has to guarantee. That's why you see the American dollar saying God we trust, and they promise that if you get our money, we'll pay you. So in Zimbabwe, you're holding a currency, and it doesn't work.
Now that we are talking about the currency issue, there is a proposition that government is willing to go exclusively on local currency by 2030. Would you see that as something that is very feasible?
No, it's not feasible under the current circumstance. For the one simple reason. I'll give you two scenarios. First scenario is government maintain the status quo. What is status quo? Where we are only looking at Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe and the Ministry of Finance as major drivers of economic turnaround and economic stabilization. I'm not saying there's nothing which is being done in other ministries, but there's not much focus, even yourself. You pay attention more to monetary policy and fiscal policy, which is the budget. You have not had forums, unless if you can correct me, where you say There's a big forum on discussing industrial policy. There's a big forum discussing agricultural policy. There's a big forum discussing energy policy. There's a big forum discussing mining policy, value addition and beneficiation, the issues regarding other critical structural policies such as export and trade policy. Those forums that do not exist. The papers are there, the policies are there, but they don't resonate with the economic discourse of today. You don't have a dashboard or a matrix or numbers which shows what the Ministry of Industry and Commerce is chasing in terms of targets. Job creation, import substitution, exports of so much, value chain by value chain. Those numbers are not there. So if we don't have that on the dashboard, ministry by ministry, and they have a target, there's a roadmap to monocurrency of central bank. And the same roadmap was repeated by the Minister of Finance in his budget. So, but remember, central bank deals with the demand side of the economy. It doesn't deal with the supply side. The one which deals with the supply side are the structural policies which I was mentioning, which are very critical. And they are a missing link. In as much they are blueprints, but they are not quite detailed to the point I'm talking about the metrics, the indicators, and which are timed. And that is a missing link. So if we go like this, we can even go for 15, 20 years without our monocurrency. But if government very clear and say, we want to have strong institutions which deal with corruption because it takes away the energy to go into production because of rent-seeking behavior, who is going to go into producing maize and wait for money for 8 months after planting, when you can make money between 4th Street and 1st Street if you are trading foreign currency. So you need strong institutions, independence of central bank, and dealing with corruption, dealing with the ease of doing business, removing impediments or cost of doing business. You need to be dealing with this policy which I've talked about. I can tell you by 2030, 2028, we can build enough reserves to support our currency. We can eliminate the debt because we have enough foreign currency. So that's the second scenario. But I've not seen a movement in that direction, where I'm saying government is it to remove a moving train in the direction of building a productive and a competitive economy that is transformative in the sense that you are value adding your resources, you are exporting value exports. 92% of our exports are raw materials. There's no country which develops when 92% of your exports are raw materials. That is 70% minerals and 22% agricultural. And only 80%, that's where you have your manufactured commodities, and 0.5%, so 7.5% manufactured 0.5 services.
You recently met with a former Central Bank of Zimbabwe boss, Dr. John Panone Tsamangujga.
Correct.
I understand you had a lengthy conversation as per I was following your Twitter post.
Correct.
About Tapa investment. We are going to touch that maybe later, but now I want to understand from your conversations if you picked anything or challenging with regards to currency management, because you know that he was one of the people who had to put his life and say, if this bond not fails, then I will resign. So did you maybe, in your conversation, part of the currency management issue, did it come out? What were the issues?
No, but Tapa Management Fund is part of now the supply side.
No, that we're going to touch later. But I want to understand if anything to do with currency management issues came out.
No, that was not my mission, and that is under the purview of central bank when to currency management. And maybe you could ask what I talked about when I met the governor last week. That would be more relevant for the governor.
Okay, that one we'll touch it later. Yeah. Okay,
but basically we focused on the issues of type of investment fund, and there are obvious takeaways on production enhancement strategies, which was talking about.
Let's go back to the construction boom. You seem to be very much appreciating the road constructions, but as far as it stands right now, it appears it's only Masvingo Bridge Road that is being sold. That the Second Republic is doing so well. Is that the same sentiment that you are sharing and standing with is to confirm that there is a construction boom as far as roads construction is concerned?
I think it would be amiss to say to synonymize construction boom with just road construction. It would be very narrow in doing that.
Yeah, but in this instance, let's look at the road construction.
So I don't want you to single it as one area. It will be like we are being narrow. But if you want to say,
let us be narrow for this moment.
So if we say we are defining we are narrow, then that's fair and fine. So where I sit, I went to Limpopo by road. South Africa. I did some meetings there around the Venda area. Yeah. So I have a few of a picture of the Masvingo Bed Bridge Road. I think let's accept there was good work which was done there. I think in two parts. People talk of Trabablas, that a lot of money was wasted there, and it's an issue which I'm also worried about in terms of value for money on our projects. Particularly when you hear that we're setting aside $80 million, then you hear that there was an additional expenditure of a couple of $10 million or so dollars. It worries the public, and as an economist, I will not clap hands for that kind of misnomer. But when you drive through Trabablas, you can't stop admiring it. It's no longer that challenge which you used to have in terms of, and it's very beautiful, by the way. That I accept, I appreciate it. But you see, the challenge we have as Zimbabweans, if there's a gray area in a particular area, we paint black everything. Yeah, if you bring anyone out of Zimbabwe and say, what do you say about this roundabout? People would appreciate it. And if someone passed through that area, say 3 years ago, and you bring the same person, a foreigner, he will tell you an honest and positive view that this is a good development. So where I am sitting, it's better to have something than to have nothing. But that does not leave government off the hook to say you should squander money, or you should allow corruption to take place without providing proper oversight. Now, that is the part of Masvingo Road, right? Part of construction. Now, let's look at the highway. I'm sure you drove it before it was rehabilitated. Now it's a different story altogether. I would have envisaged to see a four-way like what we see in South Africa, hopefully in the future. But the resources may be the constraining. But I think the scope for, what could I say, public-private partnerships are built on operate and transfer investment infrastructure development infrastructure bonds rather, to expand it to be a bit more four-way. Even Mtare, if you look at Mtare, it's like the two separate roads is four-way. It makes it even more like. But as it stands right now, I think you can't turn a blind eye to say there's nothing, and you can't say they've done nothing. Remember, we had gone for decades, and that road was an eyesore, and many lives were lost because of the state in which it was. So you can't turn a blind eye on that. But still, when you hear figures around how much money has been spent per kilometer, because normally I'm not an engineer, but I get an appreciation when I listen to engineers speaking that a road should cost 1 million per kilometer. So we were not developing a new road. We were rehabilitating an existing road. So the figures which we are hearing, you get a sense that there are more than $1 million per kilometer when you are rehabilitating. Again, value for money issues and stating of course becomes a worry. So we end up carrying the burden as taxpayers.
And let's look at the cost of Trabablas. I think at first it was projected to be around 80+ million, and then the figure changed to I think around 114 million, as was presented in Parliament by Minister of Finance, Professor Mugano. When you look at that, what kind of appreciation would you make economically, especially looking at, I'm talking to somebody who is an economist, a seasoned economist. What kind of an estimation would you put to put such a structure?
No, I can't put an estimation. I will be going into an area which I'm not an authority. What I only appreciated is where people were putting pictures on social media to say, look at this, the biggest interchange
okay.
in South Africa. It costed so much amount of money, and it was more like equivalent of ours. With 8 hours, it's like it's not very close to the biggest in Southern Africa. So you then read your mind in that perspective. You also be very inquisitive. But I think if I say it should cost 40 million, then I'm just trying to throw a number for the sake of creating.
An economist should have interest, definitely.
No, I have interest, but I think what informs your estimation is you have to have a bill of materials. You must have designs. Like you are building a house, you can't simply say this house should be $80,000 when you don't have the bill, the plan. You don't have an engineer. This thing is done by engineers, by the way, civil engineers. So it would be wrong for me. But where I would agree with everyone is that concerns which are raised should be answered. Yeah, Minister of Finance and government in particular, and Parliament has a duty to address those concerns. Are they valid? But I have never seen corresponding answers to say this is an area where we've missed it. I can also tell you, when I talk to contractors here, they are raising concern that some contractors are bidding with a lower price for them to win the bid. But then, when they are busy now constructing and building,
when they go on the ground,
they negotiate for more cost and say, so they end up exceeding the bids which were rightly priced because they were taken at a lower bid, but they have willpower and the networks and connection to ask for more. Eventually, they become more expensive. This is a shared view by many contractors which are in the industry, which I know they will not say here on media, on air because of fear of victimization, because they are doing the work for government.
Yeah,
but that is, I'm trying to qualify that even if I can't estimate, the fact remains that it's overstated.
And when we look at overall, including all these cases that we are mentioning, the manner in which our economy is being driven, I know you are not a lawyer, but would you say, or what would be your response to someone who says there is no any appreciation of Section 28, which encourages transparency and accountability?
I don't have to be a lawyer to agree with that, clearly, because let's start with the Minister of Finance. In my view, before you even go to the public, is there accountable to Parliament? The answer is no. When I look at the way things are happening, I'll give you two simple examples. The first one, he doesn't present a supplementary budget, but he overspent.
Willingly.
And the Parliament doesn't hold him to account. Yeah. And then
this happens year in, year out.
Year in, year out. Then secondly, he go and present a budget to Parliament. And Parliament approves, it's debated, spend nights and hours and hours talking about the budget. And once it is approved, he doesn't follow the budget in terms of the disbursement of the money. Some ministry overspent. I can give you the figures. By 30 September this year, Ministry of Industry and Commerce spent 23% of their budget, and the third quarter of the year is 75% of the year. They should have spent 75% of their budget in terms of utilization. The same with the Foreign Affairs and International Trade. They had spent 23%, ICT around same figure. The majority of ministries, departments, and agencies had spent below 50%, some 30%, 40% of their budget. What is the transport spending by 30 September? 267%. Who authorized that development? No one. What is OPC spending? 114%, if I'm not mistaken. So by the end of the year, you'll be guaranteed that transport would have overspent over 300% of their budget, which means 4 times what they were allocated without Parliament approving. So that is at government level. Now we go to the people. I was a bit refreshed when I saw the PEMSEC of Finance, Mr. Guamatanga, when he came to Friday Drinks to talk about the budget. It's a way of accounting to the people. And it has never happened before where he comes, is relaxed, and he's talking to colleagues, and he's answering questions which we were raising. And we actually had a program before he came, and he was actually confirming and explaining. And that is the first of its kind, which I appreciated. The government can actually go out and engage. But rarely we see that being done. And I was very honest to say 60 cars were acquired. I mean, there were expenditures which were over $60 million, of which were not approved, which were used for hiring cars, which was not proper, which they could have bought 1,000 cars with that money, if I'm not mistaken. So the point I want to say is that government has a lot of work to do in terms of accounting the citizens, and it is important for government to do that, because if they don't do that, it creates despondence, it kills what we call consensus, because when government makes a policy, we must have a shared view with that policy to say, there's a budget. Our minister wants to raise $10 billion. We should pay our taxes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That responsibility of paying taxes, particularly if I'm not working, I'm in the informal sector, to say I'm taking it upon myself to pay taxes. It is because government is responsible. I'll give you a simple example. A few months back, this year, if I'm not mistaken, it should be this year, in Japan, the toll gate was not working, and travelers were not able to pay for the toll fees. So it was opened up, and they passed freely. And when they reached home, each one took a responsibility to pay online for the toll gate, because they know this money is important to service our roads, and they know this money is used properly and efficiently. In South Africa, there are problems, but I can tell you, the people are conscious of paying their taxes, because they know government pays for about 15 million people social welfare, social these are safety nets they give to people in need. The government takes care of its citizens in education, in health. The health sector is adequately funded. So that's a way of accounting, not just answering to people, but it's demonstrating leadership, that you are providing what people want, the needs. You are dealing with the pain points of people. They are not a perfect state. So you would see them queuing, paying for tax. You see them, even government, building infrastructure, what we call operating space for SMEs. And they have a duty to pay, because they are working in a decent working area. Mm-hmm. Here in Zimbabwe, they send what do we call this? City council security guys to run after the vendors on the streets who are unemployed. There's no decent working space, and how do you think they will pay? So that is an area where other elements of accountability, and accountable with people by action, by addressing their pain points.
And I think what is central coming out now is that corruption. Yeah. Is very central to the decay of our economy.
It's a cancer. It's at the center.
And yet we have had a narrative for so many years that it is sanctions that are killing our economy. Mm-hmm. If you were going to respond or assist somebody who advances that narrative, what would you say?
You certainly cannot take out sanction as a problem for the economy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I explain to you why. When we were given sanctions by the Americans, we had got an approval from IMF to a stabilization fund to support the economy. And it was supposed to be released prior to the promulgation of the bill, Zidera. And that money did not come through. And if you read the Zidera document, it clearly states out that the American governors and directors seconded to all multilateral financial institutions should not approve a heavily indebted poor country's debt clearing strategy or any application of loans by Zimbabweans or any debt clearance. Even up right now, as we are talking about debt clearance, if the sanction were in place, it was not going to be to go through. So that is the practical side of it. On the one side, in terms of flow of capital to Zimbabwe. The other side of it is what I can call the International Commission of Oath in Court. When Americans put sanction on you, it technically freezes the interest of big investors to come to Zimbabwe because you are blacklisted in court. So we were not given trade sanctions, but we were on financial sanctions. I used to participate, I used to work in government in Brussels. I used to participate in Africa, continental Africa, sorry, I'm not used to Africa continental, Africa, Caribbean, Pacific group, which was made up of 78 countries, and with the European Union, and it was used to be called the Lome Convention, and then it became Cotonou Agreement. Now it is moved to economic partnership agreements. So in 2000, after the expiration of the Lome Convention, which was allowing African member states to export into EU duty-free and with the subsidies. We used to export sugar into EU, and we used to be paid about 600 euro per ton. Yet the cost of that, so there was a subsidy of about 300 euro per ton. We give an additional money. The price was around 300, the normal market price, 330 euro a ton. So we used to be paid 300 or more because our sugar is near organic, is nice. So they were promoting it. And whenever there's a challenge, we used to get what is called a stabilization fund to stabilize the economy, which was going to support the budget, to support the exporters. And we had a quota of exporting our sugar into EU and beef. But when we were in 2000, there were sanctions. Zimbabwe was taken off the developmental aid. There were two envelopes.
But in your
wait. Let's talk about this. Was taken out of the developmental aid. We were now given humanitarian aid. So we get aid from EU, but the developmental for development, for infrastructure development, for industrial development was taken out. So those are indicators. Yeah. So, but that is sanction. So we can't write it off. Now, but let's come back to corruption.
But I have the question before the corruption. But would you think the sanctions were justified? The Americans, the Europeans,
they were not justified. They weren't justified. They weren't justified.
What were their reasoning?
Because it was on land issue and also human rights issue. But I would have wanted to see UN sanctions than American sanctions. Because look,
the human rights issue didn't make sense to you?
Makes sense to me, but American cannot give sanction to any country because American is not the UN. So if I want to be a Zimbabwean, naturally I'd say, should Zimbabwe impose sanction on Zambia? Does it make sense to you? Now let's look at that sense. So, but if UN had given sanction to Zimbabwe, then you would understand that your matter has been done through the normal channel, even if I will not celebrate it as well. Even if that government would have messed up, who suffers on sanction? It's you and me. You think a politician will suffer because of their sanctions? Who is suffering right now? Who is taking drugs? Who is unemployed? Who is in extreme poverty? So for me, sanctions are a human rights abuse as well.
Yeah, you know where I'm coming from. I'm coming from reports and statements from government itself that say we are losing about $2 billion on a yearly basis. And I'm just trying to think
on what?
Corruption and sanctions, which one would have a real impact in terms of our economic development.
Yeah, so you need to do a proper research on that to say which one is good in impact. But I will tell you, if you cannot access lines of credits, there's something which is like, this is an area which I have issues with academics, because sometimes we become emotional without being very factual. If you are on sanctions, the premium which you get when you are accessing capital, because companies are accessing capital, you know, the London Interbank offer rate, the international interest benchmark is 2%. But our banks accesses capital at a much higher level, and sometimes we hear figures close to 10% because of sanctions, because they now have a premium. So I will tell you, Costa, that I know people don't want to hear this, but that is the fact. Sanctions are not good, and the impact is massive. So the challenge which we have, which I used to argue actually to say, corruption is the biggest sanction, because I want to put pressure on government to deal with the corruption, because my argument was very simple, and I still believe in the same argument, that the government must deal with what is they can control, what is in their purview. Because you cannot say, on one end, I am explaining to you the ravaging effect of sanctions. Then you ravage yourself again with corruption. So I would call corruption is self-inflicted sanctions, which we are giving to ourselves. Because with the corruption, we are losing 1.8 billion US dollars on illicit financial flow. But you remember, it's not government which is taking out 1.8 billion dollars. It's private sector involved, big time. And the biggest area of illicit financial flows is mining. And Thabo Mbeki chairs the task force on illicit on transfer pricing in Africa. And the amount of money which is lost in Africa through illicit financial flows per year is over $80 billion, which is more than investments which can come to which comes to Africa on an annual basis. So you can see the impact of corruption. And I'm not talking about corruption in Zimbabwe, like what you hear when the Auditor General produces a report and it goes to Parliament, and you hear that cars were bought, they were never delivered. No, I'm talking about that is excluding that $1.8 billion exclude the report of the Auditor General on the abuse of funds in state-owned enterprises, government, ministries, agencies, right? So that's another thing, which in some areas we see it's $1 billion, which has been wasted, right? So these are big elephants, both of them.
Yeah, I think you are exonerating government from illicit deals, but
no, I'm not exonerating.
If you watch did you watch the Gold Mafia documentary?
No, I watched it.
Yeah.
I'm not. If you say I'm exonerating government, I'm saying it takes two to tango. Government works with the private sector to be corrupt. So if we are dealing with corruption, we must understand the ecosystem of corruption.
Okay.
Who is involved? It will be wrong to say it's only government. Right? Did I exonerate government when I'm talking about the Auditor General report? To say, is parastatal private sector? Is the ministry private sector? Is the agents private sector? It is not. Are the tenders being given by government given to government? They are given to private sector. So those two, government and private, they are very corrupt. And you know what is very fun?
They work in counts.
They work in counts.
Okay.
So when you hear them talking about corruption, you think they're angels. So if we talk about corruption here and we only talk about government, then as an academic, I think I will be doing injustice in terms of giving a complete picture. They are all not angels, private sector and government. Right.
Yeah, so I think we agree in terms of the corruption element is a very corrosive and cancerous item to our economy.
Correct.
But do you see any political will to fight this scourge in our country?
I don't see it. I don't see it because when you look at what first, let's look at ZAC, Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission.
ZAC.
Yeah, ZAC.
Okay, ZAC.
Yeah.
Might be, okay.
This is the other one. So ZAC is kind of a value chain. So the way it is structured, it can't deal with corruption. So why? Because there's police, there's prosecutor, there are courts, and there's ZAC. These four, each one is with a mandate. ZAC, I don't think they arrest. The one who arrests is the police. The prosecutor has to produce a file and be able to prosecute. It's not ZAC. So ZAC is toothless. In my view, they must
exist.
Yeah, they must have all these functions. Then we can blame them properly to say, you're not doing your job. So already, before we talk about the feelings of people to say, is there political will in terms of directing to say, do it? let's look at the structural issues to say, is it structured in a manner that empowers it to deal with corruption? It is not. It must be one-stop shop, and it must send people to jail. Then, if they don't do that, then we begin to question to say, why have you not done it? Because if the file is still there in the prosecutor general, what are they going to do, Zach? They do nothing. So I still want to impress on government to say, give Zach or one-stop shop powers of arresting, investigating, prosecuting, and even when it comes to the process of judiciary. For me, that is very important. So as long as we don't have that, we are miles away, millions of miles away from doing corruption. But then also you look at government of Zimbabwe to say, right, if the president of Zimbabwe today says that anyone, it takes a political leadership to say anyone caught stealing or abusing funds must be arrested, must be put behind bars. That statement, and seeing it to happen really, right? I'll give you one simple example for you to qualify my view where I say there's no political will. The budget statement shows that $1.7 billion was not verified, was not authorized, was abused. And the PEMSEC of Finance wrote a memo as a circular to government to say there were 5 bullets which he raised in his foreword. And these 5 bullets were centered on one word, corruption. To say this money was abused through corruption. And you will see things like overstating of invoices, expenses, and they were not seeking spending within the limit of $2 million which was set up.
He's equally the same man who was also accused of corruption.
Yeah, that's not for me to judge. I don't know that. But
no, it's in the Hansard of the Parliament, the discussions.
I'm not saying I cannot confirm it. That's what I'm saying. I cannot confirm it. This is a matter which I can be taken to court. So I don't want to confirm what I don't know.
But what I'm saying is, it's captured in the parliamentary Hansard.
Yes, it is captured. But I'm saying I don't want to confirm that. Yeah, because I don't want to take matters which can take me to court. I want to deal with issues, not people. Right. So I want to deal with the issue of $1.7 billion. So I'm saying, if it was in Kenya, I don't want to go to China, because we normally get the experience from China, Singapore, they shoot, in China they hang you. But let's come to Africa, Kenya. If you abuse state funds in Kenya, you pay 1 million shillings, which is almost $8,000 fine. If you abuse Public Finance Management Act, in Zim, we abused it. There's no one, we've not heard of any fines. I don't show you that there's no political will. In Kenya, in many instances, you pay the fine and you serve jail term of, I don't know, is it 2 or 5 years between the two. In Zimbabwe, we have similar act, but of course, on the lower side, in terms of fines, it's not prohibitive. But the jail term is not there. So then that is where you see that we have a problem. And I've just talked about one example of $1.7 billion. The rest you see it in the auditor's report, which is quite authentic, right?
Paying for things that are not delivered.
And nothing's happening. You hear laptops of $9,000. Nothing happens. So we have not taken a position as a country, government in particular, to say, are they serious about dealing with corruption? The answer is no.
Recently, we had the visit of one of African billionaires, Dangote, and expressing the intention to invest in this country. But with this level of corruption, what does it do? To what impact does it have on the potential investors in our country?
So you remember Dangote came, was it 2014, 2015? 10 years ago.
Yes,
he came and he became a runaway investor because of corruption. The streets, newsrooms were telling us that there were some senior government officials who had positioned themselves to sell limestone, which was part of the claims which are required to produce cement. So that's why he ran away. That's what we had. And it just answers your question in terms of, we could have been talking about 10 years of Dangote investment in Zimbabwe already. I know one of senior official, when he said in the public domain, I'll say it, Honorable Bima, he used to be Minister of Industry and Commerce. He said in public that he once followed an investor who had come with money, which was enough to fund his Zim asset. And he ran away because of corruption. He went to Zambia. And he followed him. That's what he said in public. That's why I'm saying it. And he was told that your country is too corrupt. Because people were asking for 10%, 10%, 10%, 10%. So that is what you face when you don't deal with corruption. And those are the risks which happens to a country if you don't address corruption. In any way, the last point I want to raise is that investors, when they come to a country, you are lucky when they come and talk to you. What do? They look at the World Development Indicators, World Economic Forum Development Report, the United Nations Conference for Development Investment Report. We used to have World Bank Ease of Doing Business. They look at those documents. They look at Transparency International perception on corruption, and they look at your position and the explanation. So in many instances, they don't even show you that they were interested to come to Zimbabwe. They just go to the next door because they have already information that this is not a good country to invest in. Because corruption becomes a very huge cost for business. That's why I don't want government to debate about reasoning around corruption to say we have corruption because there were sanctions. Let's separate issues. Let's define sanctions as a bad thing. Let's define corruption as a bad thing.
Yeah. That's fantastic.